Have you ever felt like even the smallest changes in your life can send you spiraling? Like you're standing on shaky ground that keeps shifting under your feet? For me, as an autistic person with ADHD, change doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it can feel like an earthquake. But I know I'm not alone in this. Whether you're a neurodivergent or you're just deeply sensitive, uncertainty can feel overwhelming, like it's rewriting the script of who you are. Today, I'm sharing how I navigate uncertainty and change as an autistic person with ADHD, and how I'm learning to create a sense of safety from the inside out, because that's something I know we all need. Keep listening. Welcome to the Inner Magic Academy podcast. If you're loving our videos, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks and enjoy this episode. Welcome, I'm your host Peter Magic. And if you've ever felt like the ground beneath you is always moving, like even the simplest life changes can feel too big to handle, then this episode is for you. Growing up in an unstable environment with a single mum who was just trying to survive, I learned to see change as a threat, and it shaped me in ways that I'm still unraveling on my own healing journey as an adult. I feel how uncertainty triggers something deeper within me. I want to share my story with you today, not because I have it all figured out, but because I know that in telling these stories, we can all find a little more room to breathe. The key themes we're going to explore today is why uncertainty and change can feel overwhelming, especially for autistic and ADHD brains, how childhood survival shapes how we handle change as adults, the mental and emotional battle that arises when the outside world feels out of control, how to create small anchors of safety and routine when everything else feels wobbly, and how to honor the process of becoming, even if it doesn't happen as quickly as we'd like. Let's dive in. So in the first segment, I really just want to share my personal story, and this is sharing where I am right now in this moment, what I'm navigating through, and how growing up with uncertainty, how it shaped parts and aspects of myself, and how these things continue to play out in everyday life. So right now I'm in this season of looking for work. So I'm navigating this financial uncertainty, right? So I'm relying on something outside of me. I'm relying on someone to give me work. I'm relying on, someone to pay me. And I'm trying to build a business that feels like home. So doing this podcast and building the foundation of this business, things that I'm working towards, it feels right. And I know that it's going to be successful in the future. But right here, right now, I'm still relying on to secure some work, to work for somebody else, to do something that is completely unaligned, yet I need to do this in order to, work towards the thing that I really want, because I'm still in survival. I need to pay rent, I've got bills, just like everybody else. And it's been extremely hard because even though my current home life is completely stable, I live somewhere where I feel safe and secure. I have my own space. I'm not around that environment I grew up in, the family dynamics and all these things. I have space from that now, and I feel safe and secure in my home. But there's still the uncertainty of, when am I going to get my next paycheck, and how long is it going to be to take to find work? And, this is enough to completely throw my entire system into survival mode. My ADHD brain's taken me in this direction. It keeps focusing on the external, focusing on where we are, focusing on what we have and all the things. And yeah, I've got to pay the bills, I've got to pay rent, I've got to do all these things, and it's completely throwing me off, and I feel unstable. And even, recording this podcast today is, I don't completely feel secure in doing it right here, right now, because of everything else that's going on. But it's important that I continue working towards the thing that I want, regardless of what's happening. in the external, regardless of where things are right here, right now. It's like, I know this is going to be successful in the future. I know the vision, I know what I'm working towards. But right here, right now, I can't click my fingers and change the situation. I've got to still rely on someone to give me work, and doing something that's completely unaligned yet. I still got to do that. And there's so much uncertainty in my brain. I'm relying on something outside of me, and it's out of my control. And the brain is trying to, it's focusing on something it can't change. I can't change the timeline I'm on right now. I can't make it happen any quicker. And this is what it's like, as an autistic person with ADHD. Change doesn't feel like, like a new chapter. It feels like a storm. It's almost like you're on this roller coaster, and it's, this is what life can be all about. You're constantly on this roller coaster that never ends, because everything in the external is always changing. Things can always pull you off track, and it feels like no matter what you do, the ground underneath you is always, isn't solid. And I know this is something that I'm not alone in. There's so many neurodivergents. There's so many people who are not even aware that they're neurodivergent, that they fall under the spectrum. And it can be these small changes in your life that can send you into these spirals of self-doubt, of fear, and you can struggle to anchor yourself in and feel more secure in your own skin. And I think this is something that so many of us are carrying, right? Especially if you grew up in an environment where you had to constantly scan for safety, right? Where survival was always top of the mind. And, these patterns, right? They're wired into our nervous system. They're hardwired into our nervous system. This is something that we can carry generationally, particularly when it comes to ADHD. We can hold on to this already within our DNA. And it doesn't just go away when we're adults, right? So whether we're aware that we fall under the spectrum, whether we're aware that our brains are wired differently, this is something that I've found out at the age of 38, and everything else started to make sense for me. Why I struggled for so many years, why I was constantly, when I was in a new environment, in a new job, whatever it is, I really struggled. And I still do, but, now having this awareness and understanding of my brain, how it's working, what's really going on, I'm starting to, navigate through it, a little bit more, feeling a bit more secure in myself, knowing and understanding, okay, this is the way my brain is wired. I know what I really want in life. I'm working towards that, but things on the outside are constantly changing, and there's always going to be uncertainty. Our future is uncertain. There's so many things happening outside of us, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And we're going to learn to work with, our brain, the way it's wired, whether we fall under the spectrum of both ADHD, autism. We've got to learn to work with it. So when it comes to my childhood and upbringing, I realize where a lot of these things stem from. Not only am I aware that, ADHD is something that I'm carrying generationally. There's so many people in my family, whether they're aware of it or not, they have ADHD. And I see these patterns and these cycles that we're continuing to carry generationally in our family lineage. I understand this, and it's understanding my upbringing and how being abandoned by my father, how that's going to affect those younger versions of me, and how my mother being a single parent and being in survival mode, and just struggling to put food on the table, and the basic necessities that we need, how this is going to affect us, constantly moving environments, all these things that are playing out in our family dynamics, how this is going to affect those younger versions of you. And because this is already hardwired into you when it comes to ADHD, carrying this generationally, and your nervous system, how it's hardwired, right? It's when you actually understand these things, you understand where it stems from, and you can start to take ownership of it, because like I mentioned, anything on the outside can constantly shift and change, and it's completely out of your control. And it's about learning to understand yourself better, to understand, okay, my brain is wired in this way, and how is it that I can start to anchor, my roots deeper beneath the surface? How is it that I can start to anchor these things so whatever happens on the outside, my brain doesn't constantly spiral in this direction. I can shift my energy, I can shift out of that, and I can create a sense of safety and security, a sense of peace within myself by, learning to go within and know that, yes, everything on the outside is, it's out of my control, but what is that I can do internally to create that sense of stability? And this is the journey that we're on, particularly when we're neurodivergent. There's, it's learning to work with our brains rather than letting it work against us. The second segment we would get into is the collective experience. So when it comes to why uncertainty feels so big. So let's talk about why this feels so hard for so many of us. So when you're autistic, you're wired to find safety in patterns and familiar routines. So when those are disrupted, what it's going to actually do is it can feel like there's no map anymore. So it's like having your phone on, navigating and trying to find your way somewhere. And when you don't have that map, you feel scattered. You don't know where to go. And when you don't have this familiar routines and things in place, or when you've been thrown off by something and you're no longer doing those other things that you routinely did because this one thing is just completely threw you off, it can feel like a struggle to even continue doing the things that you used to do just from this one small change, this one small thing that's happened in your life. And this is something that, I can share a recent experience, going to Bali recently for my friend's wedding. And I knew when I was coming back that I needed to look for a new job. And as soon as I came back into this familiar environment space, it took me almost a week. It took me almost a week to start to get back into my small routines and things I was doing, like even going to the gym. I used to go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week. And it took me almost 5 days to just get back into going to the gym because of, I knew that, this uncertainty, not having a job in place, when my next paycheck was going to come in, and it threw me off. And so I stopped doing those other things, routines and things I used to do each and every day. And this is what it's like for an autistic person. And now I understand the importance of routine, even though my, ADHD brain doesn't like that. I'm almost in this contradiction. So, now I'm going to go into, for ADHD brains, there's this craving for this instant change and, some dopamine hit to feel better. But real stability doesn't come instantly. This change, it doesn't come instantly. It's like, I want, like this business, it's like, I want this to happen now. It's like, that's my brain wanting this instant gratification, this instant, come on, where is it? And reality doesn't work like that. You have to work towards the thing you really want. You've got to be consistent. You've got to stay in integrity. You've got to do these things. And, you've got to learn to work with your brain, with your ADHD brain. And it's this mental battle. The part of you that wants to fix everything now, and the part that knows it's a slow process. And it's not just about the external stuff, like the job search or the money worries. It's about the internal battle, right? So feeling that you're failing because you can't just go with the flow the way others seem to. So for other people, it might seem easy. Change might seem easy to them. It doesn't throw them off. But when you're someone who falls under the spectrum of both ADHD and autism, you need these routines. Even though your ADHD brain doesn't like that, you've got to learn to have these small little anchors and things to keep you moving forward and keep you aligned on your path, because these small changes, no matter how small they are, they're going to keep trying to pull you off track, and you've got to continue doing those things that create that safety and security within yourself. And I'll share an insight with you, particularly when it comes to having an ADHD brain. So when it comes to, having your brain being wired in this way, what's actually happening is people who have ADHD, they struggle to self-regulate. They struggle to be in the flow, because a lot of, when it comes to our mental emotional states, our mental states being affected by what we're already carrying within our DNA, all our suppressed emotions, all the things, the traumas, whether we're aware of it or not. Emotionally, it's been constantly being triggered through these stresses that we're carrying in our body. And it's so important for us to get in the flow, doing things that get us moving in the flow and getting our emotions flowing. And that's important, for myself. If I don't train, if I don't go to the gym and do weight training and really get myself in the flow, I really struggle mentally. And this is really extremely important that I continue doing this and going for a walk and going for a long walk, and just these simple things really help anchor me and keep me on track regardless of everything else that's going on. It really does help create more safety and stability within myself. Have you ever felt that tug of war in yourself? Like you're stuck between wanting to trust the process and wanting it all to be resolved yesterday. I want to say this to you, right? This is so important when you're someone who falls under the spectrum, to really understand that, that tension doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're wired to feel the world more deeply, and that's not a flaw. It's part of your magic. It's part of the ability that you have to experience what you're experiencing through your senses at a more heightened level. And yeah, we do live in this world where that is constantly playing on these stresses that we all carry generationally. We all carry these things, particularly when our brain is wired in this way. It's wired in this way for a reason. It's wired in this way because it's responding to what's happening at a cellular level and what's happening subconsciously. And we're holding on to this energetically within our body, and our outward environment is constantly playing on these stresses. This is what is going on, and it's important for us to learn to understand, to work with our brains, because if we let it unravel, if we let it go in this direction, take us our energy in this direction, we're not going to create more stability and security within our body. So it's important for us to shift from, putting our focus on everything else that's going on that we can't control on the outside, and focus on what we can do on the inside, right? To really take us back to the present moment, take us back to where we are right here, right now, in the now, right? We're alive, we're breathing, regardless of everything else that's going on. We can control what we can do right here, right now in the moment, and we can really shift ourselves out of these states that keep us spiraling and keep us in these patterns and these cycles that are not actually serving us. And so we can't do what we need to do to create more safety and security, because we can't change, we can't control what's happening outside of us. And like I mentioned, anything can shift, and our future is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So what can we do right here, right now to create that safety and security within ourselves? understanding that our brain works differently than most. We've got to take ownership of that, and we've got to start to change that. The third segment we get into is creating safety and anchors from within. So, how I mentioned, anything can change in the external, and we've got absolutely no control over that. We don't know, tomorrow is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So, what is it that we can start to do to start to get our roots to go beneath the surface, to anchor ourselves beneath the surface? So, no matter what's happening in the external, it's not going to constantly move the ground beneath our feet, right? Because our anchor points go far deeper than that. And so we continue to do those things, those routines, those things that we do that make us feel more safe and secure, make us feel like no matter what's happening outside of us, we continue to do those things that ground us. So here's something I'm learning along this journey, because I've only found out at the age of 38 that I fall under the spectrum. I didn't know this before then, but I'm learning, that I might not be able to control the timeline of finding work. I don't know when I'm going to get the next job, right? I'm relying on someone outside of me to give me work. No matter how many jobs I apply for, regardless of my experience, whatever's going on, I've got no control when I'm going to get the next job, and I've got to continue to pay my bills, continue to pay rent, continue to feed myself and all the things. But I'm relying on something outside of me to give me that, and I can't control that. And I don't know how long it's going to take for, my dreams, my vision for this business to come together. I know it's a process. It's a process in creating, building this community, people finding this podcast. And I'm well aware of the world we live in. We need to put money into these things too, for things to get out there, because social media is oversaturated. There's so much going on out there, and we live in a world of money, and we need to put this towards what we really want and see it grow. It's like, you're planting a tree. You got to continue to water it. You've got to continue to look after it, so it's going to grow. It needs sunlight, right? You need all these things, and it takes time. It's not going to grow overnight. And this is what it's like. And your brain is wired for this instant gratification, particularly when it comes to ADHD. And you've got to learn to not let it spiral, to not let it continue to fixate on where you are right here, right now. Because when you're shifting things from the inside out, when you're creating the safety and security within yourself, you're working towards the thing you want, eventually, in the dimension that you're in this physical dimension that you're in, that will then start to collapse into this dimension, the thing that you really want, because you've worked towards it. And it takes time. It's a process. And this is why I've got to, for me particularly, sticking to these daily routines, like moving my body, or having this, this morning practice of just connecting with my body, whether it's doing stretching, yoga, whatever I'm doing, meditating. All these things are helping me, ground myself, helping me shift my focus out of what's happening constantly outside of me and into the present moment, right here, right now, what I'm doing. How can I shift my energy rather than letting my ADHD brain spiral and go out of control and throw me off? And it's important to remind your nervous system that I'm safe here. I'm safe here, right now. I'm in this environment. This is my home. I feel safe and secure. Yeah, and I can't control that. I don't have a job right now, and it's completely out of my control when I'm going to get a job, and it is what it is. And it's not about being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about creating tiny anchors of safety when the outside world feels unsafe. And right now, I can't control that. And so what is it that I can do right here, right now, to continue to create the safety and security of myself? doing this podcast, being consistent, staying in integrity. This is what I really want to do, and it lights me up, and it's something I'm really passionate about, and working towards what I want. And yeah, it's not making me not making me an income right now, but it's a long-term vision, long-term process. It's not going to have an overnight success, and I'm well aware of that. And it's important for you to focus on the things that you can do, the things that keep you grounded, that light you up, that keep you in the flow. All these things are so important for you to continue to do. So maybe for you, it's something like going for a quiet walk, or writing down what's real or what's true for you each morning, or taking 5 deep breaths when your brain wants to race ahead. Trying to get yourself focusing on the present moment and what you really want, focusing on the things that you want and not focusing on things that you can't control, things that you can't change. When you shift your energy onto these things that you can control, the things that you can focus on, that that light you up, that keep you in the flow, this is going to really help support your nervous system. It's really going to help you start to create those anchor points for yourself. So whatever it is, those small anchors matter, right? So they're not just habits, they're lifelines, and they're how we remind ourselves that even when everything feels shaky, we can still create small pockets of safety. We're coming to the end of this segment, and I'll get you to reflect on this one question. Where in your life right now are you feeling the weight of uncertainty? And what's one small thing you can do today to remind yourself that you're safe, even if everything else feels shaky? We're coming to the end of today's episode, and I want you to reflect on this process of what it takes to become, right? To start to shift things from the inside out, to start to create these anchor points that go beneath the surface to really create the safety and security within yourself. So no matter what's happening outside of you, your brain doesn't continue to spiral out of control, and it doesn't continue to throw you off. And no matter how small that change is. And I want to leave you with this. You're not broken because you struggle with change. You're not failing because you feel overwhelmed by uncertainty. You're just sensitive to the world, and that's a strength, even if it feels heavy sometimes. So trust the process you're in, even if it's slow. Honor the part of you that craves safety. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just keep showing up for the small, steady things that remind you you're okay. So what I'll get you to do today is take 5 minutes to check in with yourself. What's one small thing you can do to create more safety in your day? Start there and let that be enough. Thanks for joining me here on the Inner Magic Academy podcast. Remember, if you're navigating uncertainty, keep finding your anchors, trust the slow shifts, and know that you're never alone in this journey. I'm always here for you anytime. I love you. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. If you enjoyed it, we'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to our channel and give us a like or even a comment. It really does help so much in getting our work out there to the people who need it. We're so grateful for you being here, and we'll see you for the next episode.